Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network, presented to you by Bet365. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me for this hour, Copa America Futures Preview is BJ Cunningham. And BJ, I mean, what a summer for soccer punters. We're recording this just a little bit before Germany and Scotland kick off the Euros, and then we've also got Copa America that involves North American and South American and Central American teams. So if you're a soccer punter, which I'm assuming you are if you're listening to the show, you're in for quite the summer. Let's quickly just run through the odds, and then I'm going to hand it over to you for your favorite outright. I'll give you my favorite outright. Then we'll go group by group, give out some golden boots, some other stuff as well along the way, and then we'll get out of here and watch Germany and Scotland. This is a 16-team tournament, four groups of four. Top two teams in each group move on. Then they are separated into a bracket of 8, single elimination until the final, and one team's left. And according to the odds makers, that team is most likely Argentina. They're plus 175 as the favorites. They are the defending World Cup champions. Brazil are plus 225, so right behind them. Then you get a little bit of a jump to Uruguay at 5-1. Then we're into double digits with Mexico at 11-1, Colombia 12-1, the United States at 12-1, Ecuador 16-1, then another jump to Chile in their tier of their own at 28-1. Then we start to get into some long shots with Peru at 50-1, Venezuela 66-1, Paraguay 66-1, Canada is 66-1, Costa Rica, your bogey team is 80-1, Jamaica 150-1, so is Panama and Bolivia. So if you had to play something, if you are playing something on the outright board, I know a lot of this podcast is going to be about the odds not being as fun from a betting standpoint as perhaps the Euro, but we'll still get some sweats in.
Yeah. So they set this tournament up just perfectly for Argentina and Messi. 4 of the 5 best teams in this tournament are on the bottom half of the bracket with USA, Uruguay, Brazil, and Colombia. But for me, I actually like Uruguay at 5-1 quite a bit here. Marcelo Bielsa has taken over the national team. We have an affinity for Bielsa on this podcast, and I think that his style of play works so much better at the international level than it does at the club level, and I'll kind of explain why. So he's somewhat of an innovator. He's like one of the first guys to play this high-pressing, like transitional type style that you have seen with the Leipzig teams forever, even though he never even coached them. His previous team, Leeds, was one of the craziest, like up and down, back and forth teams that the Premier League has pretty much ever seen. But the personnel that he has with Uruguay sets up for a system so well. Darwin Nunez, as you've seen at Liverpool, is a unbelievable transition striker, and they utilize him so well at getting in behind defenders, utilizing his pace, and obviously he doesn't have great finishing ability, but his ability to create that chance is so big for Uruguay. They have 2 incredible midfielders, a great ball stopper in Ugarte, who plays for PSG, one of the best all-around midfielders in the world, and Federico Valverde, a very solid center back pairing. So the spine of this team is actually really, really good and really exciting. And for Bielsa, his teams at the club level, they would tend to burn out. And we talked about on this podcast before the Bielsa burnout, whereas we get to match 28, 29, 30, this team that's doing running over and over and over again and pressing so much tends to tire out. At the international level, when you have a maximum of 6 matches, it works out actually very, very well. South America played 6 World Cup qualifiers in late 2023. Uruguay averaged just under 2 expected goals per 90 minutes. They beat Argentina and Brazil. They are well capable of not only upsetting the big boys, but going deep into this tournament. And averaging close to 2 expected goals in South America is actually an amazing feat because the matches are, as we'll talk about as we get further in this podcast, they're incredibly low event. That late 2023, the collection of all the matches only averaged 2.1 expected goals per 90 minutes. This is like 3 or 4 years ago, La Liga type of like low event. So for Uruguay to average that high of an XG per 90 is incredible. They're very well set up to play without the ball. Again, they're going to be in the bottom half of the bracket. They're favored to win their group over the United States. They'll probably get a date with Colombia, which will be a very chaotic match. But again, they've beaten Brazil and they've beaten Argentina, so they're very well capable of doing it. So it's hard to bet both Brazil or Argentina in this tournament at such low odds. I know the tournament sets up well for Argentina, and I have another bet along those lines as well. But I really do like Argentina at 5-1. And if you're somebody who is like, I don't see how Argentina loses this tournament, like they put on, like they have the easiest pass to the final. I have parlayed Argentina to win Copa America, and if you've listened to our Euro show, you'll know that I like Germany to win the Euros. I've parlayed those two together to get about to 17-1. As a little cover, just in case Argentina just runs through this tournament. And hopefully Germany makes a run at the Euros.
Yeah, I agree with you in basically everything. This thing, it's a very unbalanced draw. It's lopsided towards the bottom half of the bracket. Group C and D will meet each other in the knockout stages. So that means that, and that's with Brazil, Colombia, USA, and Uruguay. And then you look at the A and B side of the bracket with Argentina, and you're trying to look around for another team that could threaten them, and it's hard to. And that kind of is what is playing into my favorite outright here. I like Canada. They're 90-1, as high as 90-1. They play Argentina in the first match, so you can actually, assuming Argentina wins, like if let's say you're betting $10 on this, if you wanted to bet $10 on this, you could either just wait and see if they lose to Argentina, which is the likeliest outcome, or you can maybe bet $5 now and then put the second half of your stake, whatever your stake would be, on Canada at a bigger number after they lose to Argentina if they do that. But it's about the path here. So if you look at the group that they're in with Argentina, Peru, and Chile, they're the third favorite in the group to advance. Obviously, Argentina is a whopping minus 4,000 favorite to qualify for the knockout stages. Then it's Chile and actually Peru. So at some books, they're the fourth favorite to get out. Then it's Peru and then Canada. I actually think these three teams behind Argentina are basically on the same level. And I think Canada has the most upside. The one downside, I guess you would say, is that these other teams, Peru and Chile, would have more experience playing against one another. And that can definitely help because of what the World Cup qualifying regions that they're in, Canada being CONCACAF, the other three being in CONMEBOL. That said, if Canada can get out of this group, which would likely be in second place, they can absolutely win their next match or their first match in the knockout stage, because Group B is so soft. It is Mexico as the favorite. They are joined by Ecuador as the second favorite, Venezuela and Jamaica. Whoever comes out of that group, Canada has a chance to beat. And it would likely be Mexico if the odds hold, right? Mexico would finish first in Group B, Canada second in Group A. And Canada obviously has wealth of experience playing Mexico over and over again in CONCACAF. So I really like the path here for the price you're getting at 90-1. And we know that Canada has the upside with guys like Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David, all those characters, right? Like this is a team that is, I don't want to call them like an emerging power in soccer, but they're starting to climb the ranks, right? Like they're not yet into even emerging power, but they're there. They're plucky. We saw them play pretty well at the World Cup. So, yeah, I like this Canada team as a long shot.
I mean, I definitely agree, and we'll get to. I have another bet on Canada later in the podcast, but they, obviously Jesse Marsch has taken over, right? Yeah. Which, you can have your thoughts about Jesse Marsch, but the way that this group kind of sets up, if we're just going on pure talent alone, there's absolutely no reason why they should be the favorite to be at the bottom of this group.
Right.
I don't know if they're just pricing it in because they face Argentina first, obviously.
I think that's part of it. Yep.
That's part of it, I guess. But we'll get to Peru and Chile in a second. But like, if you just look at transfermarket.com, Canada's total squad value is 184 million. Chile's is 83 million and Peru's is 34 million. Like they are a clear talent edge above those two teams. And those two teams honestly weren't that great during qualifying either. So I think it's crazy that they're at the bottom of this, like the favorite to be at the bottom. So I love 90-1. Even if they lose to Argentina and they have a date with them again in the semifinals, they'll at least be able to change some things tactically and hopefully be able to. And as we'll get, the way you beat Argentina, one team has done it. You have to have effective transition pieces, and Canada definitely has that, like Uruguay does. So, yeah, without a doubt, they're the best long shot on the board.
Yep. Okay, so let's look at Group A. Argentina, of course, is a whopping favorite. They're minus 400 to win the group. The second favorite is Chile at 6-1. Then it's Peru at 10-1 and Canada at 12-1. I don't really see much here besides my thoughts on Canada, which is I think that they will be the biggest rabble rousers in this group. I think that they are the team that has the best chance to outrun their odds, but we just talked about that, so not too much more to get into for me at least.
Yeah, I like. Well, I got two bets in this, so I like Canada to advance, but I'm going to wait until after they play Argentina because I'm assuming, unless the books are just completely pricing in the fact that they're facing Argentina first, which I think is kind of stupid, honestly, then they're probably going to be a better price after they lose to Argentina. So that would be my method to play Canada to advance. But another way I want to play Group A is Peru to finish at bottom of this group at plus 150. Peru, during their 6 World Cup qualifiers, scored 1 goal. They averaged 0.47 expected goals per 90 minutes. They had an average shot distance of close to 25 yards and only averaged a little over 7 shots per 90. This is an incredibly, in terms of talent, like very barren offense in terms of what they want to do. They're reliant on a very few transition attacks here. They like to keep a very tight low block. After they had that horrible run of qualifiers, they fired their manager. They brought in a new manager, but it's still kind of the same system. Yes, if you look through some of their friendlies, they scored combined 6 goals against the Dominican Republic and Nicaragua. Well, then they played Paraguay in a friendly and they created 0.3 expected goals. So nothing's really changed here. Like, it's still a really, really bad offense. They're going to play Chile in the first match. Chile beat them 2-0 in qualifiers, and Peru created a whopping 0.13 expected goals. They're an okay defensive team. They're really bad in transition, though. Like, they're really, really struggle when you get them out of their defensive structure, which is a problem because the 2 teams that they face in this group, or at least 3 of Argentina, Chile, and Canada, can all beat you in transition. Argentina obviously being the best build-up team in this tournament. But they are, like we already said, Canada's the favorite to be at the bottom of this group, which I really don't agree with. So the next team that I would look at is Chile at plus 150. And I also like them 9-1 to be the lowest scoring team in this tournament because, well, if they weren't able to create anything against Chile, they created next to nothing against Argentina as well. It's going to come down to their match against Canada for them to even create anything. So at 9-1, I know there's teams like Bolivia and Costa Rica in this tournament that are going to struggle to score as well. But we'll get to later in the program. There's a lot of these mid-tier South American teams that just can't create anything. So taking the longer shot on them, I think, is the way to go. So Peru to finish bottom of this group, plus 150, lowest scoring team, 9-1, and then I'm playing Canada to advance after they lose to Argentina.
Yeah, I think the best way to think about this tournament is the stereotype you have in your head when you picture a Serie A match. It's kind of like that, right? Very.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, it's like La Liga from 3 or 4 years ago when there was
exactly
15 teams that all play 4-4-2s and just.
The reason I like Serie A is I feel like it's so physical too, and the weather kind of gets funky, and it's just it's very.
You know what else it is, Michael? Is just a lot of teams in. I'll get into this when I talk about Brazil, but the philosophies of football comparatively to Europe and South America are just different.
Yeah.
Like South America relies more on a lot of individual quality as opposed to, and it's, if you want to get into the debate between relationism and positionalism, that's, for some other podcast that talks about footballing philosophies. We're a betting podcast. But since they rely on a lot of individual quality, it's harder to create a lot of high quality chances, and teams are much more compact. So guys just settle for a lot of shots from outside the box is kind of what it comes down to. So just be prepared. Like if you watch full day of the Euros and then you get into Copa America and you're like, awesome, like Chile and Peru, it might be a snooze fest and push you to bed. Just be prepared for that. And we'll obviously bet into that as we go throughout the tournament, but I want to make everybody aware that South American football is a lot different than European.
Okay, we'll be on to Group B next, but before that, a reminder that Wondergoal is proudly presented by Bet365, and Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than anyone else. Every day they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boost and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, and 18 and older in Kentucky. And if you or anyone you know has a gambling problem, wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. Okay, Group B now. This is Mexico's group. They are a favorite. They are the only favorite that's not odds on at the moment. They're plus 110. Ecuador is the second favorite, plus 160. Venezuela, plus 550. And then you have Jamaica at plus 900. I think you can make an argument for Venezuela and Ecuador to go on to make runs here, but the situation, it's so important to win this group. That's the thing, right? Because you have to avoid Argentina in the quarterfinal. So if you think that Venezuela or Ecuador, or Jamaica, who are 9-1, long shots to win it, like if you think that one of these teams can finish second, and I think in a group that's wide open, you can absolutely make an argument for anyone, then you could start talking about stage of elimination bets and this, or betting a team, betting one of these teams to go to the semifinals because they can, if they win the group, because then they can, beat Chile or Canada or Peru. I would say the best option out of them, just in terms of the odds, would be Venezuela, and I know you agree.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Venezuela right now. Obviously Mexico and Ecuador are your two favorites here. I think there's a little bit of concerns with both those teams. So this is going to be a different Mexican team that you've seen in years past. They left Raul Jimenez, Memo Ochoa, and Irving Lozano off their Copa America roster. They're going younger, and it may have very well pay off. And I think that the perception of Mexico, I think, is really down right now. But they still are a very good team. I mean, there's the Gold Cup champions. Like, if you look through their underlying numbers throughout CONCACAF, like they're close to a +1 expected goal differential per 90 minutes. So it's still a very good team, and they have young talent. Santiago Jimenez is a great striker at Feyenoord. Edinson Alvarez, obviously one of the best holding midfielders in the Premier League. But in terms of, Venezuela, it seems way too straightforward throughout this entire tournament, Michael, of like the two teams that are just going to go through. Right. Once we get into Group C and Group D, there's a clear 1-2. Even if people would see in this group, it's a clear 1-2. But I think I have a little bit of concerns with Ecuador. If you look at their roster, there's their starting 11. There's a lot of talent. Caicedo, Hincape, Pacho. That's a great center back pairing. The problem with Ecuador is I'm a little concerned with their attack. Kendry Paez, who's on the books at Chelsea, is their main, number 10 creative threat, guy who links up a lot of their build-up play. But relying on a 16 or 17-year-old to be everything for you, is, especially at a major national tournament, is a little concerning. And Everton legend Enner Valencia is injured right now.
Yes,
and they don't have another striker like that can actually even get close to his type production, even though he is very old. Their wingers aren't very good at winning 1v1 situations. They're in these 6 World Cup qualifiers. They only average 0.8 expected goals per 90 minutes. Like, they're a very low event type team. So there are some concerns here, even though Ecuador's got obviously great ball stopping with Caicedo. And like I said, a great center back pairing, good fullbacks that get forward. I'm just really concerned with their attack and their ability to actually produce a lot. Venezuela, from a talent perspective, there's not much. Yangel Herrera, who plays for Girona, is a fantastic midfielder. It'll be another Everton legend, Solomon Rondon, up top for them. He's 37, playing in Mexico. But the way that they play, they're very good when they're in their defensive block. Rondon is a great hold-up striker to allow them to, guys to make runs off the back line. And during these 6 South American qualifiers, they had the 3rd best expected goal differential, which, obviously raises some eyebrows. And you're like, okay, that's kind of impressive. They played Ecuador in a very, very low event type match that ended 0-0. So they're very, very capable of upsetting these two teams. The problem is the price in them to advance. I would love something 2-1 or more. I really would, but that's not the price we're getting right now. So instead, I'm probably going to end up playing them against Ecuador in some type of fashion in their first match. But if you want, a team that maybe nobody's talking about to make a run, I think, like we already mentioned, Canada and Venezuela, I think, are those two teams that can potentially do it. But right now, nothing for me in this group. We'll probably just end up playing Venezuela on an individual basis throughout the tournament.
Okay, that brings us to Group C. So we're now into the bottom half of the bracket. As we were saying, A and B in the knockout stages, Group C and D. C, the team that wins Group C plays the team that finishes second in Group D, and you can piece it from there. That's why we're saying it's so important to win Group B, because you want to avoid the likely Argentina matchup in the quarterfinals. Group C, though, Uruguay is the favorite. They are odds on -138 at Bet365. To win the group, they are -2,000 to qualify. The U.S. is +137 to win the group, -700 to qualify. So the bookies are expecting this one to be pretty straightforward. Panama and Bolivia are the two long shots behind them. 16-1 for Panama to win the group, and 18-1 for Bolivia. They're both 7-1 to advance. So, big picture wise, it's hard to find actual outright value. I think on Team USA, they're 14-1 ish to around the market to win the tournament. I think that's a tad short. I also don't think it's going to move, so you can just kind of wait until we see. I guess it would shrink if they do avoid that Brazil matchup in round 2. But
well, if they do avoid that, guess who they're playing?
Exactly. Yeah, it's the team that just drubbed them, right? So it's like.
Yep.
And that's Colombia, but I just don't see much value in the United States. I'll talk about a bet I actually do like that's sort of correlated to the Americans, making a run later. I don't see anything here. You talked about Uruguay. I think you can probably sit back on this one too. You can, if they get to the quarterfinals, then you can start playing, doing a rolling parlay with them to advance past Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina. And probably come out just a little bit ahead of the 5-1. But of course, that things would have to shake out. But I do agree with you. I think that the Marcelo Bielsa's men are definitely live to win this thing. So those are my thoughts here. Hoping for Team USA. Maybe we get the Team USA cricket, T20 cricket, Copa America double.
That'd be nice. Let's talk Team USA for a little bit. There are obviously other podcasts that specifically focus on Team USA that you can go listen to if you really just want to know about them. Like, we are a betting podcast. Like, we're going to cover Copa America as a whole, not just Team USA. But let's talk about them just for a little bit. So, obviously, everybody hates Berhalter right now, right? Like, everybody thinks he sucks and that the United States has no chance in this tournament. I'm in the middle of that type of thing. Like, I actually think Berhalter for CONCACAF, and he sets up the United States very, very well, right? Because the United States, when they play all these smaller teams throughout North America, the Caribbean, and Central America, they're facing a ton of passive low blocks, right? So you want to be a good possession team that can build out of the back and that is effective at breaking down low blocks, which the United States is. I know people don't think that, but they are. They average 2.15 expected goals per 90 minutes since September of 2021 in non-friendlies. They do really good jobs of getting overloads everywhere. Like, the combination on the left side with Reyna, Pulisic, and Robinson is actually very, very good, and they tend to rely on a lot of that individual quality to play through these type of low blocks. The problems that come in is kind of what you saw against Colombia, is that if you are of the mindset like Berhalter is, of like, we're going to play out of the back and that's the only thing we're going to do, well, you have Matt Turner, who's not really great with the ball at his feet. You have center backs and fullbacks who don't play traditionally in dominant build out of the back type systems at the club level. So against good pressing teams like Colombia, and even for Brazil for that matter, you're going to struggle. And I think that his ability not to adapt and play more direct is what's going to hold the United States back from an offensive standpoint. Defensively, I actually think he's a very good out of possession coach. The United States, like, as you saw with their match against not only Brazil, but even if you go back to the World Cup when they played England, right? They did such a good job of denying space to the middle, forcing the ball out wide, and they held them to under one expected goal and got a clean sheet in that match. What happens, or what the problems tend to come in, is that they're not great defending in wide areas. And when you're like so compact, teams that can hurt you from out wide are generally the teams that give them problems, like the Netherlands, for example, who beat them in the round of 16. So for the United States, the bet that I have is them to be eliminated in the quarterfinals at -110. They closed as a pick'em against Colombia in that 5-1 drubbing, right? So if they face Colombia again in the quarterfinals, let's say they win this group, or even if Colombia wins their group, I'm going to go out on a limb, Michael, and say that it's not going to be a pick 'em again, just for matters. So you're definitely going to get a better price on that. And then if they end up playing Brazil, well, Brazil was minus 220 against the United States in that friendly. So and even though the United States played well, Brazil's still going to be a heavy favorite. So either way that the United States gets it, unless Paraguay pulls off a great upset or something, you're generally going to get a good price on the United States to advance in the quarterfinals. So that's my one bet here for the United States if you wanted to play something. The other bet that I like for this group is Bolivia to finish at the bottom at minus 120. Bolivia, Michael, and I know you know this, but they have this really distinct advantage, like home field advantage, because they play at such a crazy high altitude in Bolivia. Actually, their capital is the highest capital in terms of elevation of any capital in the entire world. So when teams go there, like, they generally have a good advantage, and they've even pulled off upsets over the years. They've beaten Uruguay there, they've beaten Peru there twice, but since September of 2021, they have not won a match, or they haven't even drawn a match outside of Bolivia. They've lost every single one of them. All but 3 players on their roster are playing domestically in Bolivia. During these 6 World Cup qualifiers, they averaged 0.43 expected goals and conceded 1.77. It's a very untalented roster. They're very direct. Even when they play in a low block, they're not effective at all. And Panama is no pushover in CONCACAF. If you remember, they beat the United States the Gold Cup. They got to the semifinals against Mexico of the Nations League and actually won the expected goals battle pretty handily against them in a 3-0 defeat. So Bolivia is only minus 120 to finish bottom of this group, which I think is far too short. In that final match when they play Panama, I have Panama as a minus 150 favorite projected. So Bolivia to finish bottom of this group at minus 120, I think is a pretty decent bet.
Okay, that brings us to our final group, which is Group D, where Brazil is a minus 250 favorite. Then there's Colombia plus 275. Paraguay is 12-1. And Costa Rica, team you hold near and dear to your heart, is 18-1. I know I'm sighing there. I don't see much here.
Yeah.
If you think Colombia can win the group, I would just bet them to upset Brazil on the 3-way line when that time comes. But I think this is pretty straightforward, and I got very little to in terms of actionable bets for Group D.
Yeah. The only thing that I like out here, because I agree, it's very straightforward. It's going to be Brazil, and it's probably going to be Colombia going to the round of 16. And the odds definitely reflect that. But if I were to bet anything, I actually like Paraguay to be the lowest scoring team at 10-1. They've scored 1 goal in the last calendar year. 1 goal. It was against Bolivia, too, of all teams. They've played even a couple friendlies here and still have not been able to find the back of the net. Now, here's the core of the problem, because if you look at the roster, they have a couple good wingers, Enciso from Brighton and Miguel Almiron from Newcastle. So if you look at them comparatively to a team like Chile or Peru or even Bolivia, you're like, hey, this team actually kind of has something in their attack. During these 6 South American qualifiers, they averaged 0.9 expected goals per 90 minutes, so they did underperform, but they averaged the second most shots of anybody. That's crazy. They scored 1 goal and averaged close to 12 shots a match. And here's the problem, is that all of those shots are just incredibly low quality. Their XG per shot is 0.07, which I was looking for a team to compare that to. At the club level, that would be like Sevilla of 2 years ago, when they were one of those just dreadful, god awful teams that just couldn't even muster any type of big scoring chance. Enciso hasn't played for the national team because he was injured most of the season, so you can give him an excuse there. But the reality is that since September of 2021, they have created 12.9 expected goals in 18 matches. 12.9 in 18. That is lower than Bolivia. That's lower than Peru. That is lowest of anybody in South America. You look at this group, yes, they do get Costa Rica, who's the worst defensive team in this tournament. Colombia plays a very up and down, high-paced style, but they played Colombia. and they only created 0.7 expected goals against them despite getting 11 shots. They're not going to score against Brazil. So even though they have the talent, like 10-1 for a team that scored 1 goal in 12 months and has 12.9 expected goals since September of 2021, I think is a decent shot in this tournament. So Paraguay to be lowest scoring team at 10-1 is the only bet I have from this group.
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of pushed me over, so I'll join you on that one just to give myself something. Okay, so let's talk about Golden Boot odds. Top goal scorer. Wouldn't you know, Leo Messi is your favorite at 3-1. Vinny Jr. He's right behind him at 4-1. For Brazil, Darwin Nunez of Uruguay is 5-1. Another Argentinian. Julian Alvarez is 7-1. Rodrigo for Brazil is 8-1. Then it's another Argentinian at 9-1. So here, but I wanted to read it out like this because I think it actually will help you find value on the board. If you look at Bet365's odds boards between Messi at 3-1 and Luis Suarez at 28-1, there are only 3 countries represented. It's Argentina, it's Brazil, and it's Uruguay, the 3 favorites. So right away, that's telling you that it's very likely that the winner of this Golden Boot is going to come from one of these 3 countries. But that's also a little bit of a paradox because it also tells you that it could be any one of these folks, right? Like the scoring is going to be spread around. I think outside of Darwin Nunez, like I think Uruguay is probably most of its goals are going to be set up to come from Nunez. But there's still other people in this roster. There's 4 between Nunez and 40-1 with Brian Rodriguez, Facundo Palestri, Suarez, and Nunez. That means it does behoove you to go to another team. And I actually think, and you're going to talk about a guy we both agree with, I actually think there's a little bit of value in looking at an American. And I settled on Christian Pulisic just because I feel most confident that he's going to play all the time. Like you have no who's going to lead the line. Is it going to be Ricardo?
It should be Balogun, but we don't know.
We just don't know. Right.
That's the problem.
So that's the whole problem. Whereas at least you know that Pulisic is going to be there, right? He's going to be playing. He's going to be in attacking areas. And the whole point of betting an American here is you'd hope that they would be able to put up a crooked number against at least one of Panama or Bolivia, get to 3 or 4 goals in one of those games, perhaps 2. Those are their first 2 matches. So if Pulisic can get off, could score 2 or 3 in those first 2 matches, this bet is live. Obviously, the problem is you just don't know how far the United States is going to go with Colombia or Brazil waiting for them at the other in the quarterfinals. But I do think that there is, and it's a homer pick, and you can call it square and fish play, whatever. But I do think that there's actual logical value to backing an American. Just like I wouldn't hate a play on someone like, Jonathan David, I guess, or for Canada. Similar logic, right? Like, can Canada get to 2 or 3 goals in one of their games, maybe perhaps against Peru, can he score against Chile and maybe get 1 or 2 in the rest of the tournament? I don't know. Give this bet some legs. The problem there is that group is so much tougher than what the Americans are dealing with. So that's what I do think that if you took the pencil and paper out, like there is some logic to backing an American to come out in this market. But as you said, if I see Balogun getting the start match 1, I think I would maybe think about shifting to him, but I just don't at this time. There's no sense of that. So that's my thinking here, and I do think that logic does apply to another guy we like at a good price here. Luis Diaz,
40-1. So Michael, in these, again, we keep talking about these 6 South American qualifiers because it's the data we have to go off of, right? That's very, very recent, besides since the World Cup. Not Lionel Messi, not Darwin Nunez, not Vinicius Jr., Luis Diaz led everybody in shots per 90 at 4.4. He is the main attacking threat for this Colombian side. He is the one that's going to be taking most of the shots. The thing about Colombia, they're the biggest chaos team in this tournament, as you saw when they played the United States, right? Like they are a team that will press high. They want to play in transition. And they're one of the few South American teams like Uruguay that want to get into high event type of matches. And they did that throughout qualifying. And if you look at the teams they're going to face in their group, they're going to get into up and down battle. They're going to try to get into up and down battle with Brazil, who is under a new manager. And is a guy who you'll love this guy, Michael. He's more of like, he's like the Brazilian Ancelotti, where he admits he's not a tactical savant. He's more of an adapter. And he actually wants Brazil to play more direct as opposed to Fernando Diniz, which when we get into the actual individual matches, I'll go through what happened with Brazil during qualifying. But Brazil's going to want to play more transitional. He's going to get a match against Costa Rica, who's the worst defensive team in this tournament. Against Paraguay, they created well over 2 expected goals against them. So, and then if they, let's say they finish second, they get to play the United States again. Well, we all saw how that happened. So for a guy who's getting that elite level of shot production at 40-1, and like you mentioned, all the other teams, I'd say honestly, and I'll get to a bet that I like about Messi, but like Brazil, the scoring is completely spread around. Like there is not going to be one guy that's going to get a lot of the shots. And even if you look at Argentina, Messi is getting a little bit more production than anybody else. And yes, the path is easier, but he's 3-1. Like we're not going to bet a guy at 3-1 to lead this tournament in goals. Like, so a guy of 40-1 who averaged more shots than Messi during qualifying, I think that's crazy good value given the style of play that Colombia actually plays, which is very high event. So I know Diaz didn't have the best season at Liverpool in terms of goal scoring, but it's a complete, he's the guy for Colombia. Like he's not the guy for Liverpool. So I really like Luis Diaz at 40-1 to win the Golden Boot.
Yeah, I think he's actually I would say Luis Diaz at 40-1 is the best value on the board for the entire tournament across team futures and player futures, I think. Because as you said, like he's the guy. They have a group that they can pummel the bottom half. Like, whatever, things will be tough to come by against Brazil, but they can
easily get to 5 matches in this tournament.
Yep, they could get to 5, and it's really, if you think about, even if they get to 4 or 5, they should score enough that it would be like they played all 6. Like they should have a goal total of 6 because of playing Costa Rica and
one thing I'll say also about Argentina. I won't go too deep in this because it kind of leads into my our first round preview episode, which will be coming out I believe on Monday or Tuesday of next week. So make sure to check that out. But Argentina is not a team that runs up the score. They are very much a team of once they score, they want to control the ball and completely shut a match down. And they showed that throughout qualifying. So Colombia is in this weird realm of like, they want to continue pushing and they want to continue running up the score as opposed to shutting a game down once they get ahead. So if you're looking for a reason to not back one of the Argentinian guys at the top of the board, or Messi for that matter, that could be a reason why he doesn't get to 5 or 6 goals.
Okay. So those are our Golden Boot picks. We're both on the same side with Diaz. I think Christian Pulisic, like I said, there is some caveats there, but at the time of recording, he would be my favorite of the Americans. If we were talking long shots, anything 10-1 or longer, we're both on the same side here. I did my spiel on Canada. You did your spiel on Canada. I think that they're a good bet at 90-1. They should, if they can get if they can get a result in one, if they can get 4 points in their group and advance, they should be a good bet to outrun those odds. There's also, we haven't talked about it really, but this tournament is being played in the United States, right? So it's not like it's Canada's traveling down to play in Buenos Aires. This is these are environments that these guys will be very. A
lot of them might be a little bit indoors too.
Yes, exactly, right. So there is that as well, like the familiar conditions for them.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add on Canada before we move on to close out the show?
We kind of laid it out, right? So like Canada's stage of elimination 11-1 to be in the semifinals. Like we already mentioned, like if they can get out of their group and finish second, they're going to get a very soft team coming out of Group B, whether that be Venezuela, Ecuador, or Mexico, who they're all very capable of beating. And then, in my thinking of it is like, I would much rather take, if you're somebody who's just like, I don't see any reason why they would beat Argentina, even if they lose to them in the first match. I'd rather take a stage elimination 11-1 rather than 7-1 to make the semifinals because of who they're going to face, right? Like, it's pretty, I'd say there's like the highest percentage probability of any like matchup in this tournament is going to be, you're going to play Argentina in the semis if you're on the top half of the bracket, right? In that other section. Like, that's basically how it's going to be. So stage of elimination 11-1, I think, has a lot of legs, obviously, as Canada to win the entire tournament at 90-1 does. So that'd be my only, it's hard because, as we were filling out this sheet, I was just like, for the Euros, for long shots, we do anything 20-1 or longer. There's not a lot of bets that are 20-1 or longer in this tournament that actually, have a lot of value because, just the reality of the tournament is it's a smaller tournament. The markets that are being offered are like half of what there was offered during the Euros. So we're working with what we have to play with, right? So anything 10-1 or longer, I think Canada stage of elimination at 11-1 in the semis has some value.
Okay, and real quick, you have a couple other hyper-specific player props to get into.
Yeah, so we at least have markets for a couple teams for the top goal scorers for individual teams. Like I already mentioned, Luis Diaz and the amount of shot productions he's getting. He's plus 160 to lead Colombia in goals, which since they're going to have a lot of shots, a lot of high event type matches, that generally leads to, comparatively to a team that, might only score 1 or 2 goals, like it leads you more towards taking a favorite, especially at that price, because there's going to be a lot of goals and he's getting the one that's getting a lot of the shot production. And this is probably the squarest bet I've ever played in my life, but the odds are a little too low in my opinion. But Messi to be Argentina's top goal scorer at minus 125, probably like the most bet. But Messi got 3.9 shots per 90 when he played in the 6 South American qualifiers. That was 1.7 more than anybody else on the team. He's the penalty taker. He's the free kick taker. He is still the main guy for Argentina. So at minus 125, since they are going to score a lot of goals and he's getting most of the shot production, minus 125, in my opinion, is a little short and probably should be closer to minus 150. I know Lautaro Martinez and Julian Alvarez are unbelievable strikers. But for Argentina, it's all about Messi. So him to be their top goal scorer at minus 125.
Yeah. It really does feel like this. Not only is this tournament set up for Argentina, but it's like set up for Messi's send-off, right?
In the United States, too. Funny, right? Like, they just... So. I still can't believe they put 4 of the 5 best teams on the bottom half of the bracket. Like, that was just like...
Perfect.
They're just tailor-made. It's just tailor-made for Messi and everything like that. And I mean, the odds reflect that, Michael. Like I was looking the other day, like Argentina's minus 140 to make the final. Like
I know.
Like this. Like what are we doing? Like this is not fun.
Well, we got through it, and I do think that we gave out a 40-1 bet in Luis Diaz to win the Golden Boot. That I really feel like is just terrific value. So if you are listening still, if you made it this far, I would think that that's the bet that you'd want to walk away from here with in your pocket. But that'll do it for us here. We'll be back again doing Euros. We'll be doing Copa America matches, all sorts of stuff. So you'll be hearing a lot from us over the next month. And then, of course, we only have a couple weeks off between the end of the tournaments and the Premier League. So get used to it. For BJ, I'm Michael. Thank you to our sponsors, Bet365. Thank you to you for listening. Thank you to our producer, David, for all the hard work on the back end. Best of luck with all your bets. We will talk to you again soon.